Emma walked to the crystal forest with her sample bag slung over her shoulder, her boots crunching softly on the glowing moss that covered the ground. The trees around her looked like they were made of blue glass, their branches reaching up toward the pale orange sky of New Haven. She had been living on this colony world for 3 years now, ever since her parents decided to leave Earth and start fresh on the frontier. At 16, Emma had grown to love the strange beauty of this alien place, especially the forest that stretched beyond the safety barriers of their small settlement. Her father always worried when she went out alone to collect samples for her makeshift laboratory back home. He would remind her about the dangerous creatures that might be hiding in the crystal groves, the toxic plants that could kill with a single touch, and the unstable ground that sometimes opened up into deep caverns. But Emma was careful, and she had never encountered anything truly dangerous during her solo expeditions. She loved studying the alien life forms she found, trying to understand how they worked and how they fit into the ecosystem of New Haven. Today felt different, though. The forest was quieter than usual, and even the small flying creatures that normally fill the air with their musical chirping were nowhere to be seen. Emma paused beside a cluster of purple crystal formations, listening carefully to the silence around her. Something was wrong, but she could not quite figure out what it was. She continued deeper into the forest, following a path she had walked many times before. The crystal trees grew taller here, their branches forming a canopy that filtered the sunlight into dancing patterns of blue and gold. Emma loved this part of the forest because it reminded her of the underwater scenes she had seen in documentaries about Earth's oceans. Everything seemed to glow with its own inner light, creating a magical atmosphere that never failed to fill her with wonder. As she rounded a bend in the path, Emma heard a sound that made her stop dead in her tracks. It was a weak, pitiful whimpering, like a small animal in pain. She looked around carefully, trying to locate the source of sound. The whimpering came again, and this time she was able to pinpoint its direction. It was coming from behind a large crystal boulder about 20 feet off the main path. Emma approached the boulder slowly, her heart beating faster with each step. She had found injured animals before, mostly small creatures that had gotten hurt in falls or fights with predators. She always tried to help them when she could, using the basic veterinary knowledge she had learned from books and online courses. But this sound was different from anything she had heard before, and she could not shake the feeling that whatever was making it was not from New Haven. She crept around the boulder and gasped at what she saw. Lying in a small depression in the mossy ground was a creature unlike anything she had ever encountered. It was about the size of a house cat, but it looked like a tiny dragon from the old stories her grandmother used to tell her. Its body was covered in scales that seemed to shift color in the filtered sunlight, changing from deep purple to brilliant silver to soft gold. It had 4 legs ending in delicate claws, a long tail that twitched weakly, and 2 small wings that were clearly damaged. The creature's breathing was shallow and labored, and Emma could see a dark wound on its side that pulsed with each heartbeat. One of its wings was torn badly, with holes in the thin membrane that would probably never heal properly without help. But what struck Emma most were its eyes. They were large and intelligent, with an ancient quality that seemed impossible in such a small creature. When the dragon looked at her, Emma felt as if it was seeing straight into her soul. For a moment, neither of them moved. Emma knew she should be afraid. This was clearly an alien life form, possibly dangerous, and definitely something that the colony authorities would want to know about immediately. But looking into those wise, pain-filled eyes, all she could feel was compassion for the suffering creature before her. The dragon tried to lift its head toward her, but the effort was too much, and it collapsed back onto the soft moss. A small sound escaped its throat, something between a whimper and a plea. Emma felt her heart break at the sound, and without thinking about the consequences, she moved closer to the injured creature. She knelt down beside the dragon, moving slowly so as not to frighten it. Up close, she could see that its scales were not just changing color randomly. They seemed to respond to its breathing, growing brighter when it inhaled and dimming when it exhaled. The wound on its side was worse than she had first thought, and she could see that it was losing blood at a steady rate. Without immediate medical attention, the creature would die within hours. Emma looked around the forest, making sure she was alone. She knew that what she was about to do went against every rule her parents and the colony authorities had drilled into her head. Contact with unknown alien life forms was strictly forbidden without proper scientific supervision and safety protocols. But she also knew that by the time she ran back to the settlement and convinced the authorities to send a team, the dragon would be dead. She reached out slowly and gently touched one of the creature's uninjured scales. It was warm and smooth, like polished metal that had been sitting in sunlight. The dragon's eyes focused on her face, and she could swear she saw gratitude in their depths. The scales around her fingers began to glow more brightly, pulsing in rhythm with the creature's heartbeat. Emma carefully lifted the dragon, surprised by how light it was despite its size. The creature did not struggle or try to escape. Instead, it seemed to relax in her arms, as if it trusted her completely. She could feel its rapid heartbeat against her chest and the warmth of its body through her shirt. As she held it close, she noticed that her own heart had begun to beat in sync with the dragon's, creating a strange sensation connection that she had never experienced before. The walk back to the settlement took nearly an hour, with Emma moving as carefully as possible to avoid jostling her injured passenger. The dragon remained conscious throughout the journey, occasionally making soft sounds that reminded Emma of a cat's purr. She found herself talking to it in soothing tones, telling it that everything would be all right and that she would take good care of it. Emma's family lived on the outskirts of the settlement, in a house that backed up to the old barn where she had set up her laboratory. Her parents were both at work in the main colony complex, which meant she would have several hours alone to assess the dragon's injuries and decide on a course of treatment. She carried the creature straight to the barn, where she had an examination table and basic medical supplies. Under the bright lights of her lab, Emma could see the full extent of the dragon's injuries. Besides a main wound on its side and the torn wing, there were numerous smaller cuts and bruises covering its body. It looked as if it had been in some kind of fight or accident. The main wound was the most serious concern, as it appeared to go quite deep and was still bleeding steadily. Emma washed her hands thoroughly and put on the rubber gloves she used when handling specimens. She had never worked on a living creature before, but she had read enough veterinary texts to have a basic understanding of wound treatment and emergency care. The dragon watched her preparations with those intelligent eyes, seeming to understand that she was trying to help. She started by cleaning the wounds with sterile water and antiseptic solution. The dragon flinched at first, but then seemed to realize that the treatment was necessary. Emma worked slowly and carefully, talking to the creature throughout the process to keep it calm. As she worked, she noticed that the scales around the cleaned wounds began to change color, shifting from the dark purple pain to a softer, lighter shade. The wing was the most challenging injury to treat. The membrane was torn in several places, and Emma was not sure if it would ever be able to function properly again. She did her best to clean the tears and apply small bandages to hold the edges together, hoping that the alien tissue would heal better than she expected. By the time she finished treating all the visible wounds, Emma was exhausted, and the dragon had fallen into what appeared to be a deep sleep. She made a comfortable bed for it in a large terrarium that she usually used for plant specimens, lining it with soft cloth and positioning a heat lamp to keep the creature warm. The dragon's breathing had become stronger and more regular, which she took as a good sign. As Emma sat beside the terrarium watching her patient sleep, she began to wonder what she had gotten herself into. She had just rescued and treated an unknown alien life form, something that could get her and her family in serious trouble with the colonial authorities. But looking at the peaceful expression on the dragon's face, she knew she had made the right choice. Whatever this creature was, it deserved a chance to live and heal. She decided to keep the dragon's existence secret until it was strong enough to return to the wild. She would monitor its recovery, document its physiology and behavior for her own research, and then release it back into the crystal forest where she had found it. It seemed like a simple plan, but Emma had no idea that her act of compassion had just set in motion events that would change not only her own life, but the future of humanity itself. The dragon scales pulsed gently in the warm light of the terrarium, and for just a moment, Emma thought she saw something like a smile cross its alien features. 3 weeks had passed since Emma found a dragon in the crystal forest, and the creature had healed faster than she ever imagined possible. The deep wound on its side had closed completely, leaving only a faint silver line where the injury had been. Even the torn wing membrane had repaired itself. though Emma could see tiny scars in the delicate tissue that caught the light like spider webs. Every day after school, Emma would rush to the barn to check on her secret patient. She had named the dragon Kai after reading that it meant ocean in some ancient earth language, because the way its scales shifted color reminded her of waves moving across water. Kai had grown stronger each day, and Emma noticed that it watched her with increasing alertness whenever she entered the lab. The dragon had also grown larger during its recovery. When Emma first found it, Kai had been about the size of a house cat, but now it was closer to the size of a medium dog. Its scales had become more vibrant, too, shifting between deeper shades of blue, purple, and gold. Sometimes Emma caught glimpses of silver and green to mix, colors that seemed to appear when Kai was particularly content or excited. Emma had started leaving small portions of her lunch for Kai to try, since she had no idea what the creature normally ate. To her surprise, Kai seemed to enjoy almost everything she offered, from fruits and vegetables to small pieces of meat and fish. The dragon was particularly fond of the sweet berries that grew near the settlement, and Emma had taken to bringing a handful with her each day as a special treat. On this particular evening, Emma's parents had gone to a community meeting that would last several hours. She decided to spend the extra time conducting some tests on Kai's healing abilities, as she was amazed by how quickly the creature had recovered from injuries that should have taken months to heal properly. She had documented everything in her research journal, but she still did not understand the biological processes that made such rapid healing possible. As Emma entered the barn, she immediately noticed that something was different. The terrarium where Kai usually rested was empty, and the dragon was nowhere to be seen. For a moment, panic filled her chest as she wondered if the creature had somehow escaped or if someone had discovered her secret. But then she heard a soft sound above her head and looked up to see Kai hovering near the ceiling of the barn. The dragon's wings were spread wide, and they moved with a graceful rhythm that created barely any sound at all. Kai's scales were glowing brighter than Emma had ever seen them before, casting dancing patterns of light across the walls and ceiling of the barn. The sight was so beautiful that Emma forgot to be surprised about the fact that Kai could fly again. Kai descended slowly until it was floating just a few feet in front of Emma's face. The dragon's eyes, which had always seemed intelligent, now held a depth of awareness that made Emma feel as if she was looking at another person rather than an animal. Those ancient eyes studied her face with an intensity that made her heart beat faster. Emma reached out her hand toward Kai, as she had done many times during the healing process. But this time, instead of simply allowing her to touch its scales, Kai reached out with one of its front claws and gently grasped her fingers. The moment their skin made contact, Emma felt a shock run through her entire body, but it was not painful. Instead, it felt like every nerve in her body had suddenly come alive with electricity. The world around Emma seemed to explode with new sensations and information. She could suddenly hear sounds that had been too quiet for her ears before, and she could see colors in Kai's scales that she had never noticed. But most shocking of all, she could hear a voice in her mind that was definitely not her own. The voice was warm and ancient, with a quality that reminded Emma of deep ocean currents or wind moving through mountain peaks. When it spoke, she understood the words perfectly even though they were not in any human language she had ever heard. "Greetings, young one. I have waited many days for you to be ready for this connection." Emma's mouth fell open in amazement, but no sound came out. She was still holding Kai's claw, and she could feel the dragon's amusement at her reaction flowing through their joined minds. "You can speak to me with your thoughts," Kai's voice said gently in her head. "There is no need for words between us now." Emma tried to form a coherent thought and project it toward the dragon. "Can you really hear me thinking?" she asked without moving her lips. "Yes, little healer. I can hear your thoughts as clearly as you can hear mine. This is the bond that my people call the joining of minds. It is a gift we share only with those who have proven themselves worthy." Emma felt overwhelmed by the implications of what was happening. She was actually communicating telepathically with an alien being, something that scientists on Earth had only dreamed about. But beyond the scientific wonder of it all, she felt a deep sense of connection to Kai that went far beyond anything she had ever experienced with another living creature. "I do not understand," Emma thought toward the dragon. "What do you mean by worthy, and what are your people?" Kai's scales shimmered with what Emma somehow knew was the equivalent of a smile. My people are called the Astral Guardians, and we are far older than your human race. For countless generations, we have watched over younger civilizations as they grow and learn to find their place among the stars. Images began flowing through the mental connection between them, and Emma saw vast spaceships that looked like they had been grown rather than built. She saw star systems filled with different alien races, all living in harmony under protection of beings that looked like larger versions of Kai. She saw ancient libraries containing the knowledge of thousands of civilizations, and she saw guardian dragons working alongside many different species to solve problems and prevent conflicts. But the images also showed darker scenes. Emma saw guardian ships under attack by strange machines that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. She saw dragons falling from the sky, their bright scales growing dim as some kind of energy was drained from their bodies. She saw empty space where once there had been thriving worlds, and she felt Kai's deep sadness at the loss of so much life and beauty. My people are dying, Kai explained as the images faded from Emma's mind. For many years now, we have been hunted by entities that seek to steal our life force and use it for their own dark purposes. Our numbers grow smaller with each passing season, and we have scattered across the galaxy in search of a solution to our plight. Emma felt tears starting to form in her eyes as she understood the tragedy that Kai's people were facing. But I still do not understand what this has to do with me, she thought. How can I possibly help beings as advanced as the Guardians? The answer lies in the nature of our life force itself. Kai replied, we Guardians do not simply live as individuals. Our strength and our longevity come from our connections to other living beings. In the past, we formed these connections with members of our own species, creating vast networks of shared consciousness that span entire star systems. But as our numbers have decreased, we have been forced to seek connections with members of younger races. This is not something we do lightly, as the bonding process can be dangerous for both parties. The younger being must possess very specific qualities of mind and spirit, or the connection will fail and both participants may die. Emma felt a chill run down her spine as she realized what Kai was telling her. You mean that when I rescued you, I was actually being tested? Not tested exactly. Kai's mental voice carried a tone of gentle correction, but observed and evaluated. Yes, my injury was real and my need for healing was genuine, but I could have used my own abilities to treat my wounds if necessary. Instead, I allowed myself to remain injured long enough to see how you would respond to finding me. Emma felt a flash of anger at the idea that her compassion had been manipulated, but Kai quickly sent soothing thoughts through their connection. Please do not be upset, young healer. What you did came from your own heart, not from any influence of mine. I simply wanted to observe your natural reactions to a being in need. Many humans would have run away in fear, or tried to capture me for study, or call for authorities to come and take me away. But you risked your own safety and broke your people's rules to care for a creature you had never seen before. The anger faded from Emma's mind as she understood what Kai meant. She had acted purely from compassion, without any thought of reward or recognition. Looking back, she realized that she would make the same choice again, even knowing what she knew now. So what happens now? Emma asked. If we are bonded, does that mean I am no longer fully human? You are still completely human, Kai assured her, but you are also something more now. The bond between us will allow you to access abilities that no human has ever possessed before. Your mind will be able to process information at speeds that will be impossible for an unenhanced human. Your body will become stronger and more resilient, and you will be able to sense the life force of other beings around you. As if to demonstrate this last point, Kai guided Emma's attention to the edges of her awareness. Suddenly, she could feel the presence of every living thing within a mile of the barn. She could sense the small creatures moving through the crystal forest, the colonists going about their evening activities in the settlement, and even the microscopic organisms living in the soil beneath her feet. The sensation was overwhelming at first, like being suddenly able to hear 1,000 conversations at once. But Kai helped her learn to filter the information, showing her how to focus on specific life signs or block out the background noise of smaller organisms. This is just the beginning, Kai told her as Emma practiced controlling her new awareness. As our bond grows stronger, You'll develop abilities that even I cannot fully predict. The joining of human and guardian consciousness is something that has never been attempted before. You are the first of your kind, Emma, and through you, both our species may find new hope for the future. Emma felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders, but also a sense of excitement at the possibilities that lay ahead. She was no longer just a teenage girl collecting samples in an alien forest. She had become something entirely new, a bridge between two very different forms of life. As the evening wore on, Kai taught Emma how to strengthen their mental connection and how to share not just thoughts but emotions and memories as well. By the time her parents returned from their meeting, Emma had learned to communicate with the dragon as easily as talking to another human being. But she had also learned that their bond came with dangers that neither of them fully understood yet. Emma discovered that hiding her new abilities was much harder than she had expected. During breakfast with her parents the next morning, she found herself responding to their thoughts before they had finished speaking out loud. When her mother wondered if Emma was feeling well, Emma answered the unspoken concern immediately, causing both parents to stare at her with confusion. At school, things became even more complicated. Emma could sense the emotions of every student and teacher in her classes, creating a constant flood of feelings that were not her own. During math class, she solved complex problems in her head before the teacher had finished writing them on the board. In biology, she corrected the textbook when it described cellular processes incorrectly, explaining concepts that should have been far beyond her knowledge level. Her best friend Lisa noticed the changes first. During lunch, Lisa asked Emma why she seemed different lately, and Emma struggled to give an answer that would not reveal her secret. She could feel Kai's presence in the back of her mind, offering comfort and guidance, but the dragon had warned her that revealing their bond too early could put them both in danger. The afternoon brought an unexpected challenge when Administrator Blake arrived at the school with a team of colony security officers. Emma felt her heart skip a beat as she watched them through her classroom window, speaking quietly with the principal. Through her enhanced awareness, she could sense their tension and purpose, though she could not make out their exact intentions from this distance. During the final class of the day, Emma received a message to report to the principal's office immediately. As she walked through the hallways, she reached out with her mind to contact Kai, who was hidden in the barn several miles away. The dragon's mental voice came through clearly despite the distance, another sign of how strong their bond had become. They are looking for traces of alien contact. Kai warned her. Someone has detected unusual energy signatures around the settlement, and they suspect that a colonist has encountered non-human life forms. Emma felt panic rising in her chest, but Kai sent calming thoughts through their connection. Stay calm, young one. Answer their questions honestly, but reveal nothing about our bond unless you have no other choice. I will begin preparations for us to leave this place if necessary. In the principal's office, Emma found Administrator Blake waiting for her along with a man she had never seen before. The stranger was tall and thin, with pale skin and cold gray eyes that seemed to examine everything around him with scientific detachment. He wore the uniform of the Confederation Science Division, which meant he had authority that extended far beyond the small colony of New Haven. Administrator Blake introduced the stranger as Dr. Webb, explaining that he was conducting a routine survey of alien life forms in the area. Emma nodded politely and took the seat they offered her, trying to keep her expression neutral despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. Dr. Webb studied Emma with those cold eyes for a long moment before speaking. We have detected some unusual energy readings in the areas where you conduct your biological research, he said in a voice that reminded Emma of winter wind. These readings suggest contact with unknown life forms that may pose a threat to colonial security. Emma forced herself to meet his gaze steadily. I collect samples from the crystal forest for my own research, she replied. I have never encountered anything that seemed dangerous or threatening. Dr. Webb pulled out a small device that looked like a cross between a medical scanner and a camera. With your permission, I would like to run some basic tests to ensure that you have not been exposed to any harmful alien organisms or energies. Emma knew she had no choice but to agree, even though she was terrified of what the scanner might detect. She held still as Dr. Webb ran the device over her body, watching the small screen intently as data flowed across it. She could sense his growing excitement as the readings changed, though his expression remained carefully neutral. Interesting, Dr. Webb murmured as he studied the results. Your cellular structure shows signs of exposure to unknown energy patterns, and there are traces of non-human genetic material in your bloodstream. These readings suggest that you have had direct physical contact with an alien life form within the past few weeks. Administrator Blake leaned forward in his chair, his face showing concern and suspicion. Emma, if you have encountered something in the forest, you need to tell us immediately. The safety of the entire colony could be at risk. Emma felt trapped between her loyalty to Kai and her responsibility to her community through their mental connection. She could feel the dragon's distress at the situation, but also his determination to protect her regardless of the cost to himself. I found an injured animal in the forest about 3 weeks ago, Emma said carefully. It was small and hurt, so I brought it home and treated its wounds. After it healed, I released it back into the wild. Dr. Webb's eyes sharpened with interest. Can you describe this creature in detail? Emma gave a description that was mostly accurate, but left out the most important details about Kai's intelligence and their telepathic bond. She described the dragon as a small reptilian creature with unusual coloring, making it sound like nothing more than an interesting but harmless native species. Dr. Webb made notes on his device as she spoke, but Emma could sense that he was not entirely convinced by her story. The energy readings I detected are far too strong to be explained by casual contact with a small animal, he said. The genetic traces in your blood suggest a much deeper level of interaction than you are describing. Before Emma could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the school building. Through the windows, they could see emergency lights flashing in the settlement beyond. Administrator Blake activated his communication device and spoke rapidly with the colony security center. We have a situation, Blake announced after ending his call. Our perimeter sensors have detected multiple unidentified objects approaching the settlement from space. They do not match any known ship designs, and they are not responding to our communication attempts. Dr. Webb stood up immediately, his scanner forgotten as he rushed to the window. Emma followed, and what she saw in the sky above New Haven filled her with terror. Dark shapes were descending through the atmosphere, their surfaces seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with mechanical precision, and even from a distance, Emma could sense something deeply wrong about them. Through her bond with Kai, she received an urgent mental message that confirmed her worst fears. Those are Void Collective Scouts. The dragon told her. They have found us by tracking the psychic resonance of our bond. We must leave immediately, or they will capture both of us for their dark purposes. Emma felt Dr. Webb's hand grab her arm as the man realized the connection between her readings and the arrival of the alien ships. You know what those things are, he said with certainty. The energy signatures match the traces we found in your blood exactly. Before Emma could deny his accusation, the nearest Void Collective ship fired some kind of beam weapon at the school building. The blast shook the entire structure, and Emma could hear screams coming from other parts of the building as students and teachers panicked. Dr. Webb dragged Emma toward the door, speaking rapidly into his communication device. I have the source of the alien contact, he reported, requesting immediate extraction to a secure location for detailed study. Emma realized that Dr. Webb intended to use her as bait to lure the aliens into some kind of trap, regardless of the danger to her or the other colonists. She reached out desperately with her mind, calling for Kai to help her escape from this impossible situation. The dragon's response came not as words, but as action. The barn where Kai had been hiding exploded outward as the dragon burst through the walls at full size, his scales blazing with brilliant light. Emma had never seen Kai at his full adult proportions before, and she was amazed by his majesty and power. His wingspan stretched nearly 30 feet across, and his body had the fluid grace of a creature born to fly among the stars. Kai swooped down toward the school with incredible speed, his mental voice filling Emma's head with urgent instructions. When I reach the building, you must jump from the window. I will catch you, but you must trust me completely and do not hesitate. Dr. Webb saw the approaching dragon and immediately understood what was happening. He pulled out a weapon and aimed it at Emma, shouting that she was under arrest for violation of colonial contact protocols. But before he could fire, Kai reached the building and let out a roar that shattered every window in the school. Emma did not hesitate. She threw herself through the broken window just as Kai swept past, feeling the dragon's powerful claws close gently around her body. They rose into the air together, leaving Dr. Webb and Administrator Blake staring up at them in shock and anger. Below them, the Void collective ships were landing throughout the settlement, and Emma could see dark figures emerging from their holds. The figures moved with mechanical precision, and wherever they went, the lights and energy systems of the colony began to fail. "We cannot fight them here," Kai told Emma as they flew away from the settlement. "There are too many of them, and they are too close to innocent people. We must reach my people's sanctuary ship before they can track us there." Emma looked back at New Haven one last time, seeing the home where she had grown up disappearing into the distance. She felt grief for the life she was leaving behind, but also excitement for the adventure that lay ahead. She was no longer just a human girl with a secret alien friend. She had become something new, something that both species needed to survive the darkness that was spreading across the galaxy. The Void collective ships rose from the settlement behind them, beginning their pursuit with relentless determination. Emma could sense their cold, mechanical hunger for the life force that she and Kai carried within them. The real battle was just beginning, and everything depended on reaching the Guardian Sanctuary before their enemies could destroy the last hope for both their species. Kai's wings beat steadily as they climbed toward the stars, carrying them both toward a destiny that neither fully understood yet. The journey to the Guardian Sanctuary ship took 3 hours of hard flying, with Kai pushing his wings to their limits as the Void collective scouts pursued them through the upper atmosphere of New Haven. Emma held tight to the dragon's claws, watching the alien ships grow small behind them as they climbed toward the outer edges of the star system. When they finally reached the sanctuary, Emma gasped at what she saw floating in the darkness of space. The ship was unlike anything humans had ever built, looking more like a living creature than a machine. Its hull seemed to pulse with organic rhythms, and streams of light flowed across its surface like blood vessels carrying energy throughout a massive body. The ship was enormous, easily 10 times larger than the biggest vessels in Colonial Fleet, yet it moved through space with the grace of a swimming whale. Kai flew directly toward what appeared to be a docking bay, though Emma could not see any obvious entrance until they were almost upon it. The hull of the ship simply opened before them like a flower blooming, creating a passage just large enough for Kai to fly through with his wings fully extended. As soon as they passed inside, the opening sealed itself behind them, leaving no trace that it had ever existed. The interior of the ship was even more amazing than the outside. Emma found herself in a vast chamber filled with soft, colorful light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Plants that looked like combinations of earth flowers and alien crystals grew everywhere, creating gardens that floated in midair without any visible support. The air was warm and clean, with a sweet scent that reminded Emma of spring mornings in the forests of New Haven. Kai landed gently on a platform that rose from the floor to meet them, and Emma slid down from his claws onto solid ground. As her feet touched the surface, she felt a tingling sensation that seemed to welcome her to this strange and wonderful place. The floor beneath her feet was warm and slightly soft, more like living tissue than metal or stone. Other dragons began to appear from passages that opened in the walls around them. Emma had thought that Kai was magnificent, but these guardians were even more impressive. Each one was unique in coloring and size, with scales that ranged from deep ocean blues to brilliant sunset golds to rich forest greens. Some were larger than Kai, with wingspans that could have covered a small building, while others were smaller and more delicate, their movements quick and graceful like hummingbirds. But despite their beauty and majesty, Emma could sense immediately that something was wrong with these ancient beings. Their scales were dimmer than they should have been, and their movements lacked the vital energy that she had come to associate with Kai. These dragons were dying, slowly but steadily losing the life force that had sustained them for countless centuries. The largest of the guardians approached them, his scales shifting between silver and deep purple as he moved. When he spoke, his mental voice carried the weight of ages, filled with wisdom and sadness that made Emma feel very young and small. "Welcome, young human," the great dragon said. "I am Elder Thane, leader of what remains of our people. We have sent your bond with young Kai across the vastness of space, and we have hoped that you might represent the salvation we have sought for so long." Emma felt overwhelmed by the responsibility implied in his words, but she tried to stand straighter and meet the ancient being's gaze with as much courage as she could summon. Kai moved closer to her side, offering comfort and support through their mental connection. Elder Thane continued speaking, his thoughts flowing directly into Emma's mind with gentle authority. For countless generations, we Guardians have drawn our strength from connections with our own kind. But as our numbers have dwindled, those connections have grown weaker. We have tried to form bonds with members of other species. But until now, no being has possessed the mental flexibility and emotional depth necessary to sustain such a link. The elder gestured with one wing toward the other dragons gathered around them. Each of us has attempted to bond with individuals from dozens of different species across the galaxy. Some connections lasted only moments before the alien mind rejected our presence. Others caused madness or death in the potential partner. A few lasted longer, but eventually failed when the host being could not adapt to the fundamental changes that the bonding process creates. Emma looked around at the assembled Guardians and realized that she was seeing the last survivors of an entire civilization. The knowledge filled her with both sorrow for their plight and determination to help them if she possibly could. But your bond with Kai has succeeded beyond our wildest hopes, Elder Thane told her. Not only have you survived the joining of minds, but you have grown stronger because of it. Your human neural pathways have adapted to accommodate our form of consciousness while maintaining your own unique identity. You have become something entirely new, a bridge between our species. Another Guardian, this one with scales that gleamed like polished copper, flew closer to examine Emma with ancient, curious eyes. Her mental voice was gentler than Elder Thane's, with a musical quality that reminded Emma of wind chimes. I am Guardian Lyra, she said. I would like to understand how your bond with Kai functions, if you would permit me to observe your connection. Emma looked at Kai, who nodded encouragement through their mental link. She extended her consciousness toward Guardian Lyra, allowing the ancient being to sense the nature of her bond with Kai. The copper-scaled dragon's eyes widened with amazement as she felt the strength and clarity of their connection. Remarkable, Lyra breathed. The human mind truly is more adaptable than we had dared to hope. Your species' capacity for rapid change and emotional growth makes you ideal partners for our kind. But more than that, your bond with Kai has created something we have never seen before. You are not simply sharing his consciousness or drawing from his power. You are generating new forms of energy together, creating abilities that neither of you could possess alone. As if to demonstrate this point, Emma suddenly became aware of every living thing within the massive ship. She could sense the life force of each Guardian, the alien plants growing throughout the vessel, and even microscopic organisms that helped maintain the ship's living systems. But unlike the overwhelming flood of sensation she had experienced on New Haven, this awareness felt natural and controllable. The gathered Guardians watched with growing excitement as Emma began to glow with a soft light that matched the color of Kai's scales. The light grew brighter as she focused her attention, and soon both she and Kai were blazing with energy that illuminated the entire chamber. Elder Thane's mental voice carried a note of hope that Emma had not heard before. You are doing something that no Guardian has been able to accomplish for over a century. You are generating pure life force without drawing it from external sources. If other humans can learn to do what you have done, our species might not only survive but return to our former strength. Before Emma could respond to this revelation, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The walls around them flickered with urgent patterns of red light, and Emma could feel the anxiety of every Guardian on board flowing through the ship's living communication system. Elder Thane's expression grew grim as he processed the warning signals. The Void Collective has found us. Their scout ships followed your trail from New Haven, and now they are approaching with a full attack fleet. We must prepare for battle, though I fear our weakened state leaves us little hope of victory. Through the transparent sections of the wall, Emma could see dark shapes emerging from the depths of space. The Void Collective ships were larger and more numerous than the scouts that had attacked New Haven, and they moved with the mechanical precision of swarm intelligence focused on a single deadly purpose. Kai moved protectively closer to Emma, his scales beginning to glow with battle readiness. Through their bond, she could feel his determination to fight for their new home and the Guardians who had welcomed them. But she could also sense his fear that they were about to face an enemy too powerful for even the ancient wisdom of the Guardians to overcome. As the enemy's ships drew closer, Elder Thane began organizing the remaining Guardians for what might be their final battle. But Emma felt something stirring within her, a new kind of power that came from her unique bond with Kai and her human ability to think in ways that no Guardian had ever imagined. The attack began with waves of dark energy weapons that struck the sanctuary ship's hull. But instead of penetrating the living barrier, the attacks were absorbed and transformed, their destructive power being converted into the same life force that flowed through the ship's systems. Emma realized that her presence was somehow allowing the ship to turn the enemy's weapons against them, using the Void Collective's own energy to strengthen the Guardian defenses. Working together with Kai and drawing on the support of every Guardian aboard the ship, Emma began to understand the true nature of her role in this ancient conflict. She was not just a human who had bonded with an alien dragon. She was a key to a new form of evolution that could save both species, and perhaps change the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The battle raged around them as Emma embraced her destiny, ready to discover what other miracles might be possible when human adaptability joined with Guardian wisdom. The real test of their new alliance was just beginning, and the future of countless worlds hung in the balance of what they would accomplish together in the darkness between the stars. The ship shuddered under another wave of attacks, but Emma stood firm beside Kai, her mind already reaching out to touch the consciousness of every Guardian aboard and begin weaving them into a network of power unlike anything the universe had ever seen before. 6 months had passed since the battle of the Guardian Sanctuary ship, and Emma barely recognized the person she had become. Standing on the observation deck of the new Alliance station that orbited New Haven, she watched as human and Guardian ships worked together to patrol the outer system. The sight still filled her with wonder, even though she had been instrumental in making this cooperation possible. The battle against the Void Collective had ended in victory, but not in the way anyone had expected. When Emma had connected her consciousness to the network of Guardians aboard the Sanctuary ship, something unprecedented had happened. Instead of simply sharing power, they had created an entirely new form of energy that the mechanical minds of the Void Collective could not understand or counter. The dark ships had retreated after their weapons proved useless against combined human-Guardian defense, but Emma knew they would return eventually with new strategies and greater numbers. That knowledge had driven her to work tirelessly over the past months to prepare both species for the larger conflict that was surely coming. The first challenge had been convincing the human authorities that the Guardians were allies rather than invaders. Administrator Blake and the colonial government had been suspicious and fearful when the Sanctuary ship had appeared in orbit around New Haven, especially after Dr. Webb had filed reports claiming that Emma had been corrupted by alien influences. It had taken weeks of careful negotiation and demonstration before the humans had agreed to even consider an alliance. Emma's parents had been among the most difficult people to convince. When she had finally returned home after the battle, they had barely recognized their daughter. The changes in Emma went far beyond her new mental abilities. Her eyes now held flecks of the same colors that shifted through Kai's scales, and her hair had taken on an almost metallic sheen that caught light in unusual ways. More importantly, she carried herself with a confidence and awareness that seemed far older than her 16 years. But the most challenging aspect of Emma's transformation had been learning to control the incredible abilities that her bond with Kai continued to unlock. She could now sense the thoughts and emotions of people from miles away, and her enhanced reflexes allowed her to move faster than any normal human could follow. When she concentrated, she could even manipulate energy directly, creating light and heat with nothing more than focus and tension. Kai had grown as well, both in size and in the depth of his connection to Emma. The dragon now stood nearly 8 feet tall at the shoulder, with a wingspan that stretched over 40 feet when fully extended. His scales had become even more vibrant, shifting through colors that had no names in any human language. But more importantly, his bond with Emma had awakened abilities in him that even the Elder Guardians had never seen before. Together, Emma and Kai had become something entirely new in the galaxy. They were neither fully human nor fully Guardian, but a hybrid consciousness that combined the best qualities of both species. This transformation had made them the perfect ambassadors between the two races, able to translate concepts and emotions that would otherwise have been impossible to communicate. The process of establishing the alliance had required Emma to travel back and forth between New Haven and the Guardian Sanctuary ship dozens of times, each trip strengthening the bonds between the two communities. She had worked with Elder Thane and the colonial leadership to design the new station that would serve as a joint research facility and defensive outpost. But Emma's most important work had been identifying other humans who might be capable of forming Guardian bonds. Through careful testing and observation, she had discovered that about one person in every 1,000 possessed a rare combination of mental flexibility and emotional depth required for the bonding process. Most of these individuals were young, between the ages of 15 and 25, and they tended to be people who had always felt somehow different from their peers. The first successful bonding after Emma's had been between her friend Lisa and a young guardian named Zara. Lisa had initially been terrified when Emma had explained what was happening to her, but her natural curiosity and loyalty to her friend had overcome her fear. The bonding process had taken several days of careful preparation, with Emma and Kai serving as guides and protectors throughout the dangerous transformation. Watching Lisa and Zara take their first flight together had been one of the most beautiful moments of Emma's life. The joy and wonder on her friend's face as they soared through the crystal forest of New Haven had reminded Emma of her own first experiences with Kai, before the complexity of their larger mission had begun to weigh on her shoulders. Since then, 12 more successful bonds had been formed between humans and Guardians. Each partnership was unique, with different combinations of abilities and different ways of communicating and working together. Some pairs excelled at technical research, using their combined consciousness to solve engineering problems that had puzzled both species for years. Others showed remarkable skill in combat and defense, their hybrid abilities making them nearly unstoppable against conventional weapons. Dr. Webb had continued to cause problems for the Alliance, filing reports with the Confederation government claiming that the bonded humans represented a threat to the security of normal humanity. He had even attempted to capture Lisa during one of his investigations, only to discover that trying to separate a bonded pair by force caused excruciating pain to both partners and could potentially kill them. Emma had confronted Dr. Webb directly after this incident, using her enhanced abilities to demonstrate just how much she had changed since their first meeting. The scientist had been forced to admit that his methods were not only cruel, but completely ineffective against beings who possessed abilities far beyond normal human limits. The real breakthrough in human-guardian relations had come when the Alliance researchers had developed new technologies based on the hybrid consciousness of the bonded pairs. Energy shields that could deflect void collective weapons, faster-than-light communication systems that worked through psychic connections, and defensive weapons that disrupted the mechanical thought processes of enemy machines. These innovations had attracted the attention of other human colonies throughout the region, and delegations had begun arriving at New Haven to learn about the Alliance and request Guardian partners for their own settlements. Emma found herself serving as both teacher and diplomat, helping to spread the bonding process to new communities, while ensuring that each new partnership was formed safely and voluntarily. But the most significant development had been the discovery of other Guardian survivors scattered throughout the galaxy. Using the enhanced psychic abilities of the bonded pairs, the Alliance had been able to locate and contact isolated Guardians who had been hiding from the Void Collective for decades or even centuries. Each new Guardian who joined the Alliance brought ancient knowledge and abilities that had been thought lost forever. Elder Thane had explained to Emma that the Guardians had once been the caretakers of an entire galactic civilization, using their wisdom and power to prevent conflicts and guide younger species toward peaceful coexistence. The destruction wrought by the Void Collective had scattered them and nearly destroyed their ability to fulfill this ancient role. Now, with human partners to strengthen their life force and provide new perspectives on old problems, the Guardians were beginning to reclaim their position as protectors of galactic peace. The Alliance fleet that patrolled around New Haven was just the beginning of what Emma hoped would eventually become a network of joint human Guardian stations throughout known space. Standing on the observation deck with Kai perched beside her, Emma watched as the latest group of potential human partners prepared for their bonding ceremonies. Among them were colonists from 3 different worlds, including several who had traveled for months to reach New Haven after hearing stories of the Alliance's success. Through her connection with Kai, Emma could sense the approaching presence of more Guardian survivors, drawn by the psychic beacon that the Alliance station broadcast continuously into deep space. Each new arrival brought hope for both species and increased their chances of ultimately defeating the Void collective threat. But Emma also sensed something else approaching from the darkness between the stars. The Void collective had not forgotten their defeat at the Sanctuary ship, and they were preparing a response that would test the Alliance's new abilities to their limits. Intelligence reports suggested that the enemy was developing new weapons specifically designed to counter the hybrid consciousness of the bonded pairs. Emma felt no fear at this prospect, only determination to protect the future that she and Kai had helped to create. The scared 16-year-old girl who had found a wounded dragon in the crystal forest was gone, replaced by someone who had become a bridge between species and a guardian of galactic peace. As the sun set over New Haven's crystal forest, Emma smiled at the memory of that first day when she had chosen compassion over caution and changed the course of history for two entire species. The future remained uncertain, with battles yet to be fought and challenges yet to be overcome. But for the first time in centuries, both humans and Guardians faced that future together, their combined strength offering hope for all the worlds that looked to the stars for protection. The Alliance was no longer just an experiment or a desperate alliance of necessity. It had become the foundation for a new kind of civilization, one that proved that the greatest victories came not from conquest or domination, but from understanding and cooperation between different forms of life. Emma and Kai had shown the galaxy that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was simply the willingness to help a stranger in need.